Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen across the world. Gene Panasenko here with a very, very special edition of Straight and Unfiltered. We have an incredible, truly remarkable guest this afternoon in Europe. The co-founder of multi-billion-dollar brand, a real legend in the business world, and one of the most successful by any stretch of entrepreneurs of the 20th century, Mr. Joseph Foster. Welcome to the channel, sir. So much pleasure and fun and honor to have you. Yeah.
Thank you for the invitation, Gene. It's a pleasure. It really is. And
my pleasure. Hey, you know, between you and the team of your associates and executives that are still with you, we have been coordinating this event for quite some time. We put it on the calendar a few months back, but with your traveling in spite of all those COVID restrictions, I know you spent quite some time in France where you own some places, and now you're back to the UK, as you mentioned right before we started this conversation. But yeah, that keeps you busy. But again, I'm honored and humbled to have somebody of your level on my channel. So congratulations on this remarkable book that the audience, the viewers, and the listeners, because this is not only a YouTube channel, we're being distributed on Apple and Spotify and all the major podcast platforms worldwide. So Shoemaker, what a great book. Congratulations to you. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed reading and rereading, certain areas of that. I've been probably one of the most passionate advocates of the book, spreading the word to all my friends and business associates and clients, not only here in the US, but worldwide. Again, I do have some extensive network of contacts. So congratulations to you. And let's take our audience back, all the way back to the late 19th century. But before I do that, I would love to read a confession if you allow me. So I don't like running. I was not born with the DNA of a runner, but I have been born with the DNA of an improver. So much wisdom put in those words. So again, let's take our audience all the way back to 1895, the roots really of how the business got started.
Well, that's right. Yes, thank you for the introduction. That's marvelous, and I'm glad you liked the book. I'm glad you liked the book. Yes, we go back to my grandfather. My grandfather, he was born in I think that's 1880, and by 1895, as a youngster, 15 years old, he had learned the trade of cobbling. He was a cobbler, so he repaired shoes, but he was also a member of the local athletics club, and not a very good runner, sort of, midfield when he did his running. He didn't win many races, but what he decided is that he put some spikes in the bottom of his shoe, and he learned this from his grandfather. He used to go and visit his grandfather in Nottingham, which is a sort of a good distance away from his hometown in Bolton, and his grandfather was also a cobbler. But not just, he didn't just repair street shoes, he also repaired cricket boots. And cricket boots in those days had spikes in the bottom. And we're pretty sure that he asked his grandfather, why have they got spikes in these boots? Well, it's to give them grip. Oh, when they field in, when they bowl in, and when they bat in, give them grip. That obviously was a light bulb moment for my grandfather. He thought, well, if I put some spikes in my shoes when I'm running, maybe that'll give me grip. And he did. He did. And his, I don't think it was his first time out because his shoes needed a little bit of work to get them right. But when he got them right, he ended up a very unlikely second in a most important race. And that got a lot of attention. His fellow athletes were sort of saying, Joe, what have you got on there? Well, this spike shoes. He wasn't a big lad. So I don't know whether there was a threat, you've got to make us shoes, or whether, Joe, would you please make us shoes? Whatever happened, he started to make them shoes, so that his spike shoes, locally, the local club, then of course, because the local club were doing so much better, all the other clubs all around. So he had a good 50-mile radius of clubs all coming to him. And that was the start of his business. And 1895, by 1900, he had a business. J.W. Foster, that was his business, athletic shoes. And by 1904, 3 world records were broken in his shoes. And before, well, on that first decade, he also had gold medals. And I think it was from the USA Olympics. He got gold medals. But of course, the second decade of the 20th century, we had World War I. And who wants running shoes in World War I?
Yeah, yeah.
Nobody wanted running shoes. That's
Very
right.
sad, but yeah, as you pointed, yeah, never, as you're, I'm quoting from your book, never in his wildest dreams could this Bolton cobbler have imagined that 4 years later, in 1904, as you pointed, his running pumps would be instrumental in breaking three world records. And then Granddad was an innovator, just like you became an innovator in the field of shoemaking, but he was also ahead of his time when it came down to marketing, which is what you inherited. I guess that's in your DNA.
I guess so.
You pointed out in the book, in your multiple interviews all across, that you're not really a great, marketer, if you will. You're not a great salesperson per se, but you can find the niche, success, how you can get into the channel and capitalize on every bit of success you can detect in any kind of environment. Yep.
Absolutely. Well, of course, as we say, during the second decade, nobody wanted running shoes, but they did repair army boots. And those army boots were coming back from Flanders, and they were coming back with mud and blood. And I know my father used to tell the story, because by then he was a young boy, and my father used to help scrub the mud off these boots. So that's what they did during World War II. Of course, we come then to the 20s, the 1920s, and this was my grandfather's belly epoch. This was his decade. In the year 1920, we have a quote on this, that he supplied all athletes in the Antwerp Olympics. All the athletes. That was a quote. But we must remember, we're talking track and field. We didn't have all the sports we have now, but track and field. So he supplied the athletes then. And he also supplied, he had so many gold medals during the 24 and 28, those would be Olympic Games. And that's where he had Harold Abrahams, Eric Liddell, and Lord Burleigh. They all won gold medals in his shoes. And they were the three athletes who were immortalized in the film Chariots of Fire.
Yeah, remarkable movie, absolutely.
That's it. And they were the athletes, and he supplied them. So, and he knew how to influence. I mean, influencers today are so important to business. And in fact, it is a business being an influencer. But grandfather knew how to influence. He knew who to give the shoes to, and that would create a business. Of course, in those days, that was just in athletics. Today, influencers, it's street, it's fashion. But it starts with somebody like my grandfather knowing who to give his shoes to. Now, unfortunately, my grandfather died in 1933, quite a youngish man, 53. And I wasn't born until 1935, but I was born on his birthday. Now, that was quite a coincidence.
Therefore, that's where the name came from. So your mom named you right after your grandpa, yeah?
That's why I am also called Joseph William. And
Joseph William Foster, yeah.
Joseph William, yes. My mother wasn't too excited at me being called Joe in those days, but my grandmother,
yeah, that's how you go.
That's right. My grandmother, she was quite a fiery woman, and she said he brought his name with him. So indeed, that was it. And so I'm called Joe after him, of course. And we're talking now in 1935. By 1939, World War II. So I'm only a youngster. And, people say, well, what was it like during the war? Well, I remember the sirens.
The bombings, the raids.
We could see it. But, when you're 5, 6, 7, 8, I mean, I was 10 when it was over.
Right.
It's just fun. Ridiculously, it's just fun that you have. The lights are out, it's no street lighting.
I think it's a game, but I mean, you don't realize the magnitude of that disaster that took away, not millions, but tens of millions of human lives across the continent. Yeah.
Yep, you don't know that. So it's not a tragedy to me, but okay, education was a bit limited, but by the time we were 10, we were back into school and things were going again. And my father, of course, wanted me to be a runner, but I didn't want to be a runner. I don't know. Yeah, I preferred kicking a ball. It's a sport. Let's kick the balls around. But
Right.
anyway,
Right.
so and I had an engineering education up until 17. Then at 17, I joined the company. I went into the REEBOK Founder company to learn how to make shoes.
And
running
that was
shoes.
actually came back home from serving with the Royal Air Force, correct?
No, that was before.
Oh, that was
That's-
before that. Okay.
That's after after school, college.
Yeah, right at the school. Okay.
I spent a year then at REEBOK Foster's because it was 18
Okay, so
when the call up. So that is in 1953. Jeff and myself. Jeff was older than me, but because
he's your brother for the audience, for those folks who have not read the book. Okay.
That's it, my brother. He'd been deferred by 2 years. And so we both went into the armed forces together. I went into the Air Force. Jeff went into the Army.
Right.
But he went to Germany. And in Germany, he saw Adidas, Puma, these shoes being made there. I was in the Air Force, but I did manage to get 12 months playing badminton because I was pretty reasonable at badminton. I could play well. And the armed forces loved the sport. They love sport. Yeah. So for 12 months of my 2 years, I'm just playing badminton and sport and enjoying it.
Right.
But after 2 years, we come back and we back into the factory. And of course, we've changed. We've changed a lot. You have to look after yourself. When you go away, mother's no longer making the bed, no longer doing the washing, making your meals. And, you're thinking a bit differently. And we come back and we see a failing company. The company is not doing what it should be doing. Adidas, Puma are starting to sell their shoes into the United Kingdom, into England. And, we're trying to talk to my father. But my father and uncle, who'd inherited the business after my grandfather died, it was all right whilst grandmother was there. She looked after she kept them apart. We didn't realize that really they were at war with each other. They just didn't get on. So
family relationships, mixed with business are not always a good recipe.
Yeah, that's right. Just like Adi Dassler and Rudy Dassler, but Rudy left. Rudy left and set up Puma. This didn't happen at the Foster company. It didn't happen at all. Right. They just fought each other. And my uncle, he was on the hand sewn shoes, the top class, and father was on more machine made shoes. But they never talked. In fact, they had complete separate sets of books. It's ridiculous. There were two companies within one, and we couldn't get them to talk. We couldn't get them to work together.
It was very sad. Yeah.
Yeah, just impossible. So of course, Jeff and myself, we would talk it over. What are we going to do? And talk to father and say, look, we need to do something because, this business is dying. And the father would say, look, when your uncle's gone and I'm gone, this business will be yours. And we said, there will be no business.
It may be dead by then. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be dead. But, we didn't want him dead. It was like, no, we don't want you to go. But the business will be dead.
The potential, you see the huge potential that you guys can develop. Yeah.
Well, the point is, our livelihood would have gone as well. We wouldn't have had a business. We'd have had
that. Yeah.
So Jeff and I, we discussed it. We actually went to college during the evenings, went to college to learn how to make shoes. Because, we knew what we had learned from the factory floor, how to make running shoes. But the best thing about going to college is we met a lot of people.
Right.
And those people could give us a lot of help, a lot of advice. So that when we did eventually decide to leave, where do we get this? Where do we get that? So we were introduced, how do you make a last? How do you make a pattern? All this, these people were so helpful to us. But we did in 1958, Jeff and I, we decided that was it. We're going.
You were 23 and 25 at that time, right, you and Jeff?
That's right. Yeah, I was 23, Jeff 25. And it was quite a difficult conversation I had with my father to say, look, and it was on a Friday evening. We decided that was it. Well, we won't be working here anymore. We're leaving. And yes, it was quite disturbing. In fact, he picked up a letter opener. And I thought he was going to come to me, but instead he gave it to me and said, here, just stab me now, which is wasn't.
Right.
And there was really very little I could say, apart from the fact that we need to do something. We're sorry, but we need to do something. And with that, we moved about 6 miles down the road to the next town, Bury, and we rented an old brewery. And it was a ramshackle building. It had 3 floors. The ground floor had no windows, so we couldn't use the ground floor. The top floor, the roof was absolutely useless, and rain was coming in every time it rained. And so we had more cans up there, cans and buckets to collect all the water. And the floor itself was very unsafe because it had been like that for a long time. So the floor was rather
completely out of order, a completely decayed building. But that's what it takes, I guess, to start a building from this. I mean, to start a company from the scratch, virtually. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're in the middle floor, and even that was a little bit sort of tender, should we say? And we had to just put our machinery around the side, around the edges, so that we didn't cause too much weight in the middle.
Yep.
But we're young. We're young, we're undefeatable. What can happen? What can go wrong? No, nothing can go wrong. So we set up our company, and we're doing nicely. 18 months into our business, our accountant is saying, yes, look, boys, you're making some money. That's fine, but you better register your name, because we'd set up the company as Mercury Sports Footwear. Oh, so we're not very bright at this and saying, why? Well, he said, if somebody else says those Mercury shoes are pretty good, we'll make some of those Mercury shoes. Right. You're going to have a legal problem with saying, look, that's our name. So you got to register it. We tried. We went to an agent, and the agent looked at it. It was pre-registered, already registered. British Shoe Corporation had it registered. Yeah. And they offered it to us for £1,000. But £1,000 is nothing. It's like saying $1,000 or $2,000. No, it's just pocket money that now. But in those days, we'd set a whole factory up for £250.
It's an awful lot of money. Absolutely. Yeah. You're talking about decades and decades back. Yeah. And you're a startup. Yeah. You're a starting company. Yeah.
We were on a startup. We didn't have that money. And, the bank were not going to lend us any money. We were just a small startup. Why should they lend us money? So I'd gone to the patent agent, and I was sitting in his office in Manchester, which is near to where we were, and his window was open. And he said, look, if you can't buy it and you've got to find a new name, you want one like that. He pointed through the window to Kodak. And I said, well, what's special about Kodak? He said, they made the name up. That's theirs. It's, they've not found it anywhere else. They made up the name. Oh, right. That's the best sort of name. Right. So we go, I go back, and we sit around. He said, because the agent had said, don't bring me one name, bring me 10.
Yep.
And we're sitting down thinking, 10 names. How do we do that? I mean, Cougar. Yeah, that's pretty good. Falcon. That's good. Yeah. Cougar, Falcon. And we're sitting there. I have a dictionary, and I've got to take you back to 1940.
It was an American version I've read, right? An American version of the dictionary with a different spelling than the British and the UK version. Yeah.
That's right. Hey, 1943. It's a bit like today with COVID. There's a war on. This is the middle of the war. We're not going anywhere. We had to give up sort of holidays by the sea, and we had to look at local events. Yeah. And I won a 60-yard race. Great. But I had a secret weapon. I had Foster spikes.
That was the trophy, yeah.
Yeah, Foster spikes. I won the race. And I go up to collect my prize. And like I say, what did I get? A dictionary. And I'm saying, where's the football guys? A dictionary. And then an American dictionary, Webster's. Yeah, like I say, they don't spell the same as they do with the Oxford English Dictionary.
Right.
But fast forward now to 1960, my dictionary is there, my proud dictionary, and I like the letter R. I don't. That's what's not. So I open it up at R, and I'm leafing through. It doesn't take too long before I get R, E, REEBOK. Reebok. What's that? A small South African gazelle. A running company. Gazelle. That's it.
Well, yeah.
Gazelle. Well, so I take this whole list of names back to the register. But I say to him, look, we want this one. We want this Reebok. We've got to be in love with this. It's got to be our passion. You know, this has got to be our name. The agent came back about a week later, tested everything out, and he came back and he said, the only one that is clear, totally clear, is Reebok. Fantastic. One caveat. And what's that? If anybody starts making shoes out of Reebok skin, you cannot stop them from saying these are Reebok skin shoes. Right. Jeff and I looked at each other and said, no, that's never going to happen. No, we'll go with Reebok. We went Reebok. However, that caveat, it put us in the B section of the register. We didn't know there was anything more than a register, but there's an A section and a B section. We're in the B section of the register. 20 years later, that registrar came back again and said, you now move to the A section. And why is that? Well, everybody now knows that Reebok is a shoe. It is not an animal. So that's how we got Reebok.
It's a brand name, yeah.
It's a brand name now, yes.
Who would have thought that getting that American Webster dictionary would lead you eventually, years down the line, to picking up the name that would become a brand name of a $4 billion conglomerate known worldwide. There is not a person anywhere on the planet, I guess, including the most remote locations. I'm sure you have done a lot of traveling. I've done.
Yes.
But the people are not familiar with the name Reebok. So what
Absolutely.
a coincidence, or some people would say, what a divine intervention.
Well, I think that, you know, there are a lot of those divine interventions as we go along in our, the journey that we took. There's a lot of that because we're only into 4 years into the company. Right. And we get a letter from Adidas, the Adidas lawyers.
Right.
Then our silhouette was 2 stripes and a T-bar. And they thought that infringed their 3 stripes. And, you know, we're a small company and we look at Adidas, no. But it took us about 2 or 3 minutes before we were smiling. Adidas, no, we're here. We've arrived. Adidas have to send us a letter. We pinned that. That went onto the wall for a long time. But we thought, right, okay, we had to change our name. No, let's change our silhouette. And that's how we got what we know now as the Vector. And you see it on the book, on the front of the book.
Yeah, that's a beautiful logo. Yeah, absolutely.
We came up with that. And so that again, we thought, well, that's an improvement. So we're pushed into changing our name, we're pushed into changing our silhouette, and we come up with the Vector.
Fascinating, truly fascinating. Well, you recreate the business. You started from the scratch by utilizing, again, the expertise and the lessons learned both in the UK and in Jeff's example, you know, the lessons you learned in Germany. You capitalize on what you have learned from Puma, you know, manufacturers and what have you. You launch this company, you get traction in the UK, but at some point you realize, hey, you know, as successful as we're doing here, to really experience some exponential growth, we do need to get into the US market. And I remember, again, from reading the book, Yale University deal was the very first batch of sneakers, of Reebok shoes that you delivered to the US market. But from there on, can you please expand on that and talk about your experience, how many years it took you to penetrate the US market, but you, in your vision, you realized the importance of putting your time and effort and that early expertise you already had at that time, investing all that into the US market, understanding an incredible potential that America has to offer to Reebok for the growth.
Yeah, well, what the Yale University agreement, and there was I still, well, I don't have the paperwork, it's now in the archive in Boston, but it was an agreement between J.W. Foster's and Bob J. and Jack and Frank Ryan. And I never met Bob J. and Jack, but I did meet Frank Ryan on a couple of occasions. Yeah. Frank Ryan was a the mile champion, I believe, in America, but he was also a head coach at Yale. So they were sending 200 pairs a month over to Yale, and I think Yale was selling them on to other universities. But what I did know is that over in America, college and university, they have coach, and sport is so important. And
they're gods. Coaches, they're gods out there. Whatever they say is the law.
Absolutely. Coach is the god. And you can go to university on a scholarship, a sports scholarship. Yeah. So I knew you would think, well, there were 350 million people in America. There were at that time about 55 million people in the UK, but the disposable income in America was so much bigger. We looked at a lot of data, and we put America at 100, and you look at the UK was about 18, 19, Germany was about 25, Japan was about 25. So in relative speaking, this is a big market. Plus,
it's so different. Plus the demographics potential of the US growth versus the UK, obviously.
Absolutely, yes. And people said, and they asked the question, why didn't you go to Europe? Europe's 350, 400 million people. But there's 27, 28 countries, different languages, different cultures. And not all those countries have the disposable income, but America.
So true, so true.
Same language. We could, we could, and same culture. We could do that.
Yeah,
that's the place to go. So it was 1968. 1968. I'm having trouble with the family saying, look, we need to get into America. Why go to America? Why? That's expensive. How do you get over there? Well, the government came to our help. The British
government actually comes to help.
They came to help.
Amen to that.
I'm just reading in a magazine, we want you to export. They wanted us to export our product. And this was a sports magazine. So they said that we will fix you up with a stand at the NSGA show in Chicago. That's the National Sporting Goods Show of America. In Chicago, we'll pay for the stand. We'll also pay for your return airfare. And we'll pay for half your hotel bill whilst you're there. Wow.
Small fortune. It's a small fortune right then and there you're getting from the UK government to promote your own company. How much better does it get?
How much better? It's cheaper than staying.
Christmas came early that year, right? For the Foster and the family.
It did indeed. So, okay, we're going. I'm going. I went with a friend, and we took a 2-week ticket. I don't know why we took that ticket, because the government were paying anyway, but the 2-week ticket comes cheaper because you're staying for 2 weeks. You can
getting discount, and hope that,
right. So we went into New York, and we thought, good thing, have a look at New York, and we enjoyed New York. My friend, he looked at the outdoor stores, and I looked at the sports stores, just to see.
Of course, that's what the business is, yeah.
Absolutely. Then we moved into Chicago. Bah, that was cold. February. We're talking
freezing
February.
Cold. Yeah, the winds from the Lake Michigan. I mean, they're piercing.
Michigan is frozen over. It's really cold, coldest I've ever felt. But however, the show was great. A lot of people.
It's the biggest probably industry event, that they had in Chicago at that time. So it's again coincidental or with divine intervention or combination of skills and luck and everything else, put together. Right. But that's what benefited you so dramatically, yeah.
Well, McCormick Place there is a big, big building. It really is.
Yes, sir. I have dear friends and then clients in Chicago. I've been there multiple times. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure but I didn't sell anything. My friend, he sold some climbing boots, but we were making them in the climbing boots anyway. We're making the boots fine.
Yeah.
But we didn't sell anything. But everybody loved the shoes, and there was some. Well, where do we get them from? And I said, from England. And it was like, England? Is that New England? No, not New England. England across.
Not a lot of Brits would come, in 1968 across the ocean, all the way to Chicago to speak about their production. Yeah. And
that's right. So, no, I didn't sell any shoes. But okay, and I didn't know at that time that I'd be coming back 11 years. Not always in Chicago. It did move down to Houston every 4th year, I think, something like that. I think it's 3 years in Chicago, 1 in Houston. So twice I went to Houston with the NSGA show. But it was 1979.
Right.
before I got a foothold, before I got the distribution I needed.
11 years. It took you 11 years
11
to
years.
get those distribution rights. But as you mentioned in the book, and I guess in your multiple interviews, it was the time and the effort so well spent, because you realized, hey, after putting all the time and effort in getting the US distribution, you will not have to chase the rest of the world. The rest of the world will actually come to you asking for that.
Right. I knew that was the market to get, because I knew on going to that exhibition that everybody from around the world came to it.
It's really who is who in the industry. Yeah. Absolutely. So it was such a great decision. Yeah.
As everybody used to come, wherever, every country used to come and see. Well, there was one in Germany as well, the ISPO show in Germany. That was a big one, but the real biggest was the one there at in Chicago, the NSGA show.
Right.
But fate took another sort of turn here, and that was late in the 60s. Bob Anderson introduced Runner's World. Runner's World was a magazine, but the magazine was a couple of pages, a couple of A4 pages to begin with. By 1975, it was a thick, glossy magazine.
Huge edition, yeah, one of the landmark editions in the industry. Yeah,
absolutely. It was everybody. It was the Bible. That became the Bible. Every runner just read it because there were results in there. There were events and dates for events, and a lot of shoe advertising. And of course, Bob Anderson, who produced it, he became that confident in his abilities that he decided he could tell people which shoes were the best.
Right.
And
so they introduced ratings. That was the year when the ratings were introduced in the industry. And that was one of the major events that obviously impacted so positively Reebok. Yep.
Well, in the first instance, and it was probably a mistake at the time, he decided he would say, this is number one, this is number two, this is number three. So if you were number one, we've got 350 million Americans, probably 35 million runners at this time, and maybe 3 million of those would like the number one shoe.
Yeah.
So the orders for Nike, I mean, you can imagine. Phil Knight is
dominating. Yeah, of course, they were dominating the U.S. and eventually, the world market at that time before you guys really experienced that phenomenal expansion. Yeah.
Yeah, but the problem Phil Knight had is the fact that all of a sudden somebody wants 3 million pairs of whatever it was, Tailwind or whatever, and he's importing from Japan. No chance. He couldn't supply that. Right. He couldn't. By the time you get that machine to turn and to bring that product in, 12 months have gone by. Bob Anderson, his side, decides another shoe is going to be number one.
Logistics is a huge issue for Nike, and it's absolutely not an issue for you because you guys, you manufacture it right then and there. So you have such a great advantage in distribution, in how fast you can deliver it to the recipients, the buyers. Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah. But of course, this only lasted 2 years. And I think the trade themselves, I mean, they were bringing in last year's number one. And by the time they got it, Bob Anderson had changed which will be number one. So you're left with a lot of shoes because everybody wants the new number one.
Right.
It just lasted 2 years. And then Bob Anderson or somebody helped him to change that, to change the ratings to be star ratings.
Right.
So it's 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars.
Right.
That was the answer. That clicked. We could make a 5-star shoe. To make a number one shoe, that was a big lottery. That was a difficult thing to do. But we could make a 5-star shoe. We knew exactly
how standards, to attract more and more. Yep.
Yeah. So we knew what to go in, and we produced Aztec. And Aztec was our contribution. We sent it to Runner's World. They looked at them all. Right. And I knew we were going to get a 5-star. But we're talking now 1979. And we're at the NSGA show and came out. Running was growing so much that came and said, okay, we'd like to place an order for 25,000 pairs.
Right.
Ooh, we're a small company still.
That was a phenomenal number for the company, pretty much a startup still at that point. Yeah, 25,000 order.
we're 20 years into the business, but we're not that big. We're
I'm talking about, relatively
Yeah.
speaking, at the global level compared with huge
That's right.
giants like Nike. Yeah.
That's right. And but and I knew beforehand that if we were going to get a 5-star shoe, we need help. And so Bata, they said they would help us. They were the biggest shoemaker company in the world, Bata. They would help us. Right. So I knew that. But then Kmart said, but we need a better price. Oh, better price. We also knew that the business was all going out to the Far East. South Korea, they were making a lot of shoes now. And the price was less than half of our price that we could produce them back in the UK, or even Bata could produce them.
Right.
So we'd also sort of thought about that. And I had made the acquaintance of people in London who were the agents for South Korea. So we were looking at that and knew that that might happen. Okay, but then Paul Feynman came on the stand.
Right.
Paul Feynman from Boston, he had a little company and they were exhibiting there, Boston Camping.
Yep.
Boston Camping. Now, I like Paul. He was great. I could talk to him. I can talk to you. We're having a chat.
Right.
And, this is not Kmart. This is Paul Feynman. And Paul said, Joe, I'd love to be your distributor, but, we really need a 5-star shoe. I said, Paul, come and have a look. Showed him the Aztec. Joe, okay, but it's not a 5-star. That's not got the rating yet. No, Paul, it's not. But
it's a new shoe you just introduced to the market, you said, right?
That's right. It's the new shoe. So we tried this out in Edmonton in the 1978 Commonwealth Games, and great. Everybody loved the shoe. We got heaps of gold medals and whatever at those Commonwealth Games. I said, I'm pretty sure this is going to be a 5-star. Paul said, look, if it's a 5-star, I'm in.
Right.
Okay. We're in February. The shoe edition doesn't come out until August. Well, it's usually out the last week in July.
Right.
So I've gone back from the exhibition, from the show, but I do go back about May time, and I go back to have a word with Kmart. I go to their place,
right.
And I get to the receptionist, and I'm asking for, I think it's a Mr. Biasati who right. came to us on our stand. So she sends me across to this big building, and in this building there's over 200 desks, and they point out, this is Mr. Biasati. He's one of 200 buyers, and I'm thinking, well, if we do sell or send them 25,000 pairs, it may be my first and last 25,000 pairs, because if they don't sell, Kmart will give you so much space, and right. they've got to make so much money for that right. space. If it doesn't come up, you're dead. So I move on then and go and see Paul Feynman. I call him at Boston. Paul picks me up, and we go meet his brother and his brother-in-law. They're running the company, Boston Camping. Right. Paul, I think, is the CEO, but the other two guys are there, and his salesman, Jim Bartley. Right, this is a nice company. They sell tents, fishing rods, you name it. This will be a nice bolt-on company. This, they'll probably take the shoes in there and be able to give it a nice start. I go back, and it's now we're last week in July, and I pick up the phone to Paul and say, Paul, can you go down to the kiosk and see if you can get Runner's World and check if we've got 5 stars, because that's going to be it. It took him an hour.
It's critically important for making that deal. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. An hour later, he came back. He said, Joe, Aztec, brilliant. 5 stars. We got it. We're in.
Yeah, we scored.
That was it. Whoa, fantastic.
A breath of relief. Yeah, it's happening.
Yeah, that was it. That was the hook. That would get us into the American market. All the rest of the times we've been pushing hard, but this was the hook. This would drag us in. Oh, fantastic. So, but he said, Joe, not only did Aztec get 5 stars, Inca and Midas. Inca was a track spike. Right. Midas was a racing shoe. They also got 5 stars. We had 3 5-star shoes. That took us into America.
Fascinating, fascinating, truly. And so many, again, examples. It's really hard work, perseverance, hard work and perseverance over and over and over again. Was it Winston Churchill who stated, hey, the harder I work, the harder I work, the luckier I get, right? So nothing can replace, again, hard work, perseverance, focus, keeping track, of your final destination. And you have done it remarkably well. So you're securing that huge mega size contract, with the US distributor, and that's really how you start getting traction at the US market. But another huge landmark, I guess, development for the REEBOK Corporation was the invention or the entry into the aerobics market. Because again, as you pointed out in the book, when you talk about the athletic shoes, you're talking about track and field primarily, sweating, guys. And here aerobics, takes over the world, and you see a huge niche, huge opportunity to really expand into that part of the market. So I would love you to touch upon that, please.
Well, this came about through Angel Martinez. I don't know if you know of Angel. Angel Martinez, he was a tech rep down in Los Angeles.
Yep.
And his wife, Frankie, she's coming home from these aerobic classes.
Right.
And she's with her friends, they're coming in and they're just full of it. And Arnold's saying, oh, what are you doing? And she said, what? We're doing aerobics. And he said, what's that? Aerobics? What is it? Well, we're actually exercising to music.
Yeah.
Oh, and she said, it's absolutely great. You've got an instructor and the rest of us, and it's fantastic. And I said, can I come down to your next lesson?
Check it out, yeah.
I'll check it out. So he went down there. What did he see? He sees the instructor in a pair of sneakers. He sees half the class also in sneakers.
Yeah.
The other half, no shoes at all.
Fair
I thought, why don't we make a woman's shoe? Not just your conventional unisex
sneaker,
shoe,
but really designed specifically for that purpose.
Specifically, why don't we do that? And we'll make it out of glove leather. Wow, great. Arnold, this idea. Off he goes, up to New York. Paul Feynman. Paul, there's this wonderful thing. We really need to get some shoes for these girls. It's absolutely great. It's going to be big. Paul's saying, slow down. Slow down, Arnold, just a minute. We're a running company. And we're doing very well. Our running shoes are selling well. We're growing nicely. Why do we want to start making shoes for a few girls down there in LA? Well, Arnold wasn't put off. Arnold, in fact, went down to the back door and had a word with Steve Liggett. He was our production man. Yeah. Steve, get me a couple of 100 pairs of shoes.
You're still talking about a tiny batch, of the product that you're looking to manufacture just to kind of like tap into the market, test the waters.
That's right. That's right. Because you couldn't make less. To go on a production line with anything, you've got to have 200 pairs. He got his 200 pairs. Right. He took them down to LA and he gave them to the instructors. And, well, I mean, the rest, when you've got Jane Fonda buying a pair of Reebok and actually using them in her workout videos.
She's doing those commercials all across, yeah.
And she bought them, she bought them. Yeah. And then of course, these girls, they love this shoe so much. They didn't just wear them for the aerobics classes. No, they went. They
go shopping. They go just, hiking. Yeah.
Yeah. They go to work. They take the heels in the bag and they go to work and the shoes and they change. They love them so much. Fantastic. So the whole thing started to blow up. We did have one problem, which luckily we were talking about Los Angeles. Right. They were made out of glove leather, and glove leather you can just tear it like a piece of paper. Right. It's 0.7 of a millimeter thick. That's pretty thin, and you've got to try and work with it. Work with it so you can put the adhesive on. So around the edge of the shoe, it was so thin and so weak, they were just blowing out. They were just ripping apart. After about 4, 5, 6 wears, I say, but the girls didn't mind. They just went out and bought another pair.
Talking
Okay.
about repeat business, right? Repeat customers.
Right. Okay. It took about 3 months to really get that problem out of the way. By the tanneries decided that they could make a thicker leather, and so that started working.
Reinforcing the whole structure, yeah.
That's right. I mean, right now we're about a $9 million company. 12 months later, we're a $30 million company.
Talk about exponential growth.
Absolutely. And then another 12 months, we're 90 million. And then
insane by every stretch, yeah.
Absolutely insane. And then 300 million. And then it went up to 900 million. So we're nearly $1 billion.
Incredible. So it's really spreading like a wildfire, you know. Speaking of California, you know, it's ironic, but I mean, speaking about wildfires, you know, California is the first place to come into your mind. And really, they set up the trend out of Los Angeles, you know, with those aerobic shoes that really set up the incredible trend, not just across the US, but worldwide eventually. Yeah.
It absolutely went worldwide. It was tremendous. The growth was fantastic. And by the time we got to 4 billion, or short of 4 billion, this was the end of 1989, and I decided it's time for me to retire. I decided, you know, the challenges.
Yeah, we're speaking about 89. We're speaking about retirement. But prior to that, it was a huge landmark event as well. In 1985, you took the company public, right, on the New York Stock Exchange for the obvious considerations. Hey, you know, it does make sense to have a publicly traded company where you can raise, you know, millions and hundreds of millions of dollars and utilize it for the expansion of the business and all the ensuing benefits. So I would like you to touch upon that as well, just briefly at least, before the retirement. And how taking the company public obviously impacted the whole culture of the company. From being really a family business, it became a huge multinational conglomerate, you know, with attorneys and CPAs, accountants, you know, basically running the business. So I would like you to expand and educate our audience on that, please.
Well, this was more something that happened in America at this time. You know, the American market, this is where the explosion came on, and where the company went public. For me, I'd gone back into global. I was traveling, and I was putting on 30 different distributors throughout. I was going around the world just expanding the market.
Were you getting any sleep at those times?
Well, I mean, it's when things are so exciting and when things are growing and developing so big, you know, you used to live off the excitement. You live off that. You know, it's absolutely fantastic. So not only was I doing that, I was also hosting the Pro Celebrity Tennis Tournament in Monte Carlo. It was on the Princess Grace Foundation. So I was hosting that as well. So we were getting maybe 20 celebrities from Hollywood. You know, whoever you might want to mention, there were all the
who is who in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we had the tennis players coming in. So this was a great time. And you know, you just go along with it. But at that point of time, I am thinking, well, the challenge isn't here anymore. You know, the challenge is gone. Now this is corporate. And with it being corporate, you know, it's like, is this where you want to be? And so it wasn't where I wanted to be at that time. It was like, all right, great. You know, you're meeting all these stars, you're meeting everybody, and you're dining at the best places, you're spending time in Monte Carlo. It's wonderful, but there's a limit to where you want to be. And I was 55 at the time, not very old, but you know, younger people need to come in, need to take over the business. So for me, it was time to move out. But as you picked up, and as you mentioned way earlier, that whilst I'm sitting back there, okay, the phone didn't stop ringing. I've retired, but the phone is still ringing. And they're asking me questions. And it's maybe in the second book, which I've got to say about many other things that happened. And, you know, you think, well, what are we doing? But that was easier for me, though. It was easier just to answer the telephone. But even today, where we are now, I'm very close to the archive because I move a lot. I'm traveling a lot. And I have a lot of history, a lot of bits and pieces. Now they're all in the archive, and I'm very close to the archive. And as you know, Adidas have just, well, in the process of selling the business to AB Group, and that's going to be an interesting future. You know, I think now Adidas didn't really do Reebok any favors. And they were supposed to be put them together and it'll be as big as Nike, but really it more or less transferred the Reebok business to Nike, to Adidas. But I think it's going to be quite interesting now where this is going. Shaq O'Neal is very involved.
Very much so, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think he loves the company, and we need a bit of that back again now. We need that love. We need that feeling that this is, you know, wow, what can we do with it? So that's going to be very interesting. And I think the phone may be ringing again.
It will be, I have no doubt at all. But the formal transition to Adidas took place in 2006, right? And just for our audience here, you know, just to whet even more their appetite, the number that the company sold for was close to 4 billion, which is absolutely incredible. Again, considering the fact that only, you know, a few decades prior to that, you and Jeff, you started the company from the scratch, literally, and you created that multi-billion-dollar global conglomerate, you know, brand name recognized all across the planet, which is remarkable in every sense. And the fact that you're not resting on your laurels, and you spent the last few years putting together this remarkable book, Shoemaker, that again I enjoyed incredibly, and I hope that millions and hopefully hundreds of millions of folks across the world will purchase and enjoy it as much as I did. Yeah, absolutely.
So do I. Yes, I hope they enjoy the book. But you know, it was about my journey, and we might say persistence or stupidity, whatever it is that keeps you going. You mentioned Churchill, and there's a statue of Churchill in Paris. It's probably the best statue I've ever seen of him. But you know, the underneath there, it just says, "Never surrender. We will never surrender." And that was his mission, never surrender. So it is keep going. You know, we're running a program now for to get people with after COVID now, just to get going. And it's just keep going. And so we're running that program, and we're having it's having good success. It's good that we're getting people again, you know, get their energy. You've got to have that energy. You've got to believe. And yeah, that's what they've got to believe in the company, even through tough times, which is what we did.
And you did indeed. It's, as we keep quoting Winston Churchill, what a remarkable man he was, remarkable man, great warrior, you know, great politician. Never, ever, ever give up. Never give up. And as you said, you know, hanging that monument in Paris, it speaks volumes of his recognition, not just in his homeland, you know, the UK, but obviously in France as well. Again, the book is incredible. Besides regular online and physical retailers, is it still the case, Mr. Foster, that whoever is interested in purchasing the book, they can go directly to your website? And if that's the case, please mention your website and how else, you know, the people can get in touch with you as far as buying that book or speaking engagements, whatever the case may be.
Well, the website is www.jwfosterheritage.com. And that will, we put that there because it's been difficult to sign books with COVID, but if you send direct to us, we will send you a signed copy. So that's how to get a signed copy. Otherwise, Amazon and whatever other place, it's in the bookshops right now. But if you want a signed copy, send it to our website. Yes.
Well, that's an incentive huge enough. Again, without any additional charges, you know, you can go directly to the source, the pillar, the foundation of this remarkable company and this story, and get the book, you know, with an autograph of Mr. You know, Joseph Foster. Incredible story. Again, congratulations to you, sir. I appreciate so much on getting on this channel and sharing your extremely positive and such an inspirational story. We do hope it's going to inspire many folks across the world, you know, you mentioned COVID-19, the lockdowns across the planet, a lot of people that paralyzed, it's like deer in the headlights, you know, paralysis, you know, complete. And some folks, they just use it as an excuse not to get back on track. But you said, hey, you know, never stop, just keep pushing. And you're such a perfect, you know, great, inspirational living example. I mean, you accomplished everything that the people can accomplish, you know, business-wise, you know, personally, you're very successful, obviously accomplished person. And you just keep working, you know, enlightening the people and spreading the words of wisdom. So again, I do thank you so very much. And to our audience, I do hope you folks, you enjoyed this presentation as much as I had. You know, please put huge likes, you know, spread the word with your peers, you know, make it spread like a wildfire, like this fascinating, you know, story we just heard from, Mr. Foster. Thank you so much. And until soon, signing off, Gene Panasenko on Straight and Unfiltered. And Mr. Joseph Foster, again, thank you so very much, sir. Continuing success to you.
Thank you, Gene. Been a pleasure.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you.